Imagine a world where the relentless pursuit of strength was twisted into an excuse for hatred, and the fervent elevation of the individual was misconstrued as a violent subjugation of the collective. What if one of history's most provocative thinkers, a figure renowned for his piercing intellect, was not a misogynist, but instead a man wrestling with the dark corners of his own inner world? A man whose revolutionary ideas have been repeatedly inverted, used as a weapon to justify the very opposite of what he stood for. The name Nietzsche is often synonymous with the will to power. Yet, what if the common perception of him as a hater of women is nothing more than a distorted reflection of our own societal shadow regarding gender? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, we will confront the conventional understanding of Friedrich Nietzsche, one of history's most misunderstood figures. We will explore why his views on women, though often interpreted as misanthropic, reveal a far more complex and nuanced perspective than is generally assumed. We will dissect his life, his philosophy, and his psychological struggles to reveal not only what he saw, but more importantly, why it matters, and how his journey of self-discovery can forever alter the way we perceive our own internal shadows and animas, and as a direct result, how we relate to others. This is not just about understanding Nietzsche, it is about understanding ourselves. Correctly interpreting Nietzsche is not merely an academic exercise. It is crucial for understanding the hidden biases that often cloud our judgment and dictate our actions. By understanding the complexities of his struggles and his apparently misogynistic views, we are in fact gaining a deeper insight into ourselves and the collective unconscious we all share. Misinterpreting his ideas is not only inaccurate, it has profound and potentially harmful consequences, as seen by how they have been consistently used to justify damaging and inhumane ideologies throughout history. This is because the shadow, a concept described by Carl Jung, represents the disowned parts of ourselves, which we tend to project onto others and our world. Nietzsche's struggles serve as a mirror to help us recognize how we are all prone to distorting reality to justify our own shadow beliefs, and how these are then projected onto others, creating distorted and dangerous views of reality. Therefore, failing to understand his true intentions perpetuates harmful patterns of thought, while engaging with his ideas in an authentic manner offers a crucial opportunity for personal and collective growth. Correctly understanding Nietzsche, therefore, requires a deep dive into his philosophy, his personal struggles, and most importantly, our own hidden biases. This journey will force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, our society, and the recurring themes of power, weakness, the shadow, and our journey towards individuation. Friedrich Nietzsche's life was marked by profound personal struggles. Born in 1844, he experienced a challenging childhood, which included the death of his father when he was just a young boy. He was greatly influenced by the women in his life, especially by his overbearing mother and his sister Elizabeth, who would later greatly contribute to the misinterpretation of his work. His intellectual trajectory was shaped by his personal experiences and his deep engagement with philosophy. His failed relationship with Lou Salome, the woman he proposed to and was subsequently rejected by, is often cited as a pivotal moment in his life and a defining point in the development of his philosophical ideas. To fully grasp Nietzsche's ideas, we must understand the philosophical movements that influenced him and shaped his perception of the world. Nietzsche developed his most notable ideas, concepts such as the will to power as the driving force to self-overcoming rather than domination, the concept of the Übermensch as an ideal of self-mastery, and the eternal recurrence as a radical acceptance of life and all its challenges, which are all deeply connected to his critiques of societal norms and his own personal suffering. These are not abstract ideas. They are living forces that reveal his core beliefs about human potential and the importance of facing one's own internal demons instead of projecting them onto others. This journey will also explore the important intersection of Nietzsche's philosophy and Jungian concepts, especially the ideas of the anima and the shadow, which will add an extra layer of understanding to the complexities of his ideas, showing the duality of light and shadow, strength and weakness, conscious and unconscious, which are so prevalent in his life and work. Is it possible to truly separate the man from his ideas? Can personal struggles profoundly influence philosophical perspectives? These are not merely academic questions. They are essential to understanding how our own biases influence our perception of the world and the projection of our own shadow unto other people. The central mystery we will explore is not just about Nietzsche's supposed hatred for women. It is a reflection of our own prejudices and hidden assumptions about gender and power. By understanding his struggles, we are given a unique opportunity to delve into our own shadow, to recognize and confront the hidden aspects of our psyche, and ultimately integrate them into our persona, which is a necessary step towards individuation, as Carl Jung explained. Throughout this journey, we will explore the recurring pattern of misinterpretations and distortions of his work that have been consistently used to justify opposing views. We will also see how these distortions are deeply connected with the idea of the shadow, and how they serve to reinforce distorted personal and collective beliefs about the nature of reality. Understanding Nietzsche, therefore, holds the potential for personal transformation, but only if we are willing to embark on a journey of self-discovery. What if the answer is not only in understanding the great philosopher, but to understand ourselves? By confronting our own inner shadows, we can not only understand Nietzsche more deeply, but also we can finally begin to understand ourselves. To truly understand Nietzsche's complex views, we must delve deeper into the core tenets of his philosophy, which are so often taken out of context and distorted by popular interpretations. His concept of the will to power, for instance, is frequently misunderstood as a desire for dominance and control over others. However, Nietzsche intended it to signify the fundamental drive for self-overcoming, for the constant striving to reach one's full potential, for the continuous surpassing of one's own limitations. It is not a will to dominate others, but a will to master oneself, to cultivate one's strength and creativity, to affirm life in all its manifestations. Similarly, the Übermensch, or overman, is not meant to be a literal superhuman, or a master race, as it is often misused by political ideologies. Instead, it symbolizes the human potential to transcend conventional morality, to create one's own values, and to live life to its fullest, and to realize one's potential for self-mastery. It is a call for individuals to embrace their creative power, to forge their own path, and to become the authors of their own lives. And finally, the eternal recurrence, another pillar of his thought, is not a fatalistic idea, but a challenge to live each moment so fully that you would wish to relive it infinitely. It is an invitation to embrace every aspect of existence, both joyful and painful, with unwavering acceptance and love. These core concepts, so often misinterpreted and misused, are crucial for understanding the underlying currents of Nietzsche's philosophy and how they all relate to his view on women. In his own words, Nietzsche says, "The essence of all beautiful art, all great art, is gratitude." However, this is often forgotten in the rush to condemn his ideas and to project our own shadow unto his philosophy. By looking at the original texts, we can find a path that leads us to understanding rather than projecting. Nietzsche's philosophical ideas are also deeply intertwined with his incisive critique of morality, especially the morality he associated with Christianity, which he viewed as a form of slave morality, designed to suppress the natural expression of power and strength. He saw traditional morality as a way of diminishing human potential by promoting weakness and subservience, and by denouncing the values he saw as inherent to the affirmation of life, such as pride, strength, and self-assertion. In his view, the slave morality, which emerged from Christian values, was a reaction against the master morality of the ancient world, where the powerful and noble affirmed their own values and virtues without remorse. For Nietzsche, this slave morality was the result of the weak banding together in order to subvert the strong and impose their own values on society, promoting compassion, humility, and self-sacrifice, not as virtues, but as tools of manipulation to control the strong. The weak virtues became an insidious way to keep the strong from achieving their potential, and therefore a way to deny life itself. He believed that by adhering to these conventional morals, people were preventing themselves from achieving their full potential, from embracing their will to power, and from becoming what he termed the Übermensch. Therefore, the path to self-overcoming is a path away from this morality, and a path into the embracing of the full potential of life. Nietzsche, while criticizing the values of weakness, also openly questioned if society should keep supporting the weak, and what would be the consequences of always protecting and nurturing the less capable, which he felt was a harmful practice. This is important to understand, as his ideas on morality are essential to understanding his criticism of women, as he saw that the social constructs of the time kept them in this place of perceived weakness. This must be seen in context, so it can be properly understood. In his own words, Nietzsche describes this concept of morality, saying that there are no moral phenomena at all, but only a moral interpretation of phenomena. It is crucial to understand that Nietzsche's apparent criticism of women stems from this broader critique of societal weakness and herd mentality. He did not attack women out of a personal vendetta, but through the lens of the cultural understanding at the time, where they were seen as embodying many of the qualities he saw as detrimental to personal and societal growth, as he perceived women as weaker and submissive, according to the norms of his era. He did not see them as being inherently weak, but rather as being conditioned to embrace weakness and subservience. It is important to note that Nietzsche also criticized men who displayed the same qualities. Therefore, his attacks should not be seen as a gender-specific attack, but as a critique on the weakness he saw in society as a whole, as he believed that both men and women were equally susceptible to herd mentality and the denial of their own will to power. He did not see women as inferior to men, but as equally subjected to the oppressive forces of society. Therefore, his work can be seen as a call to challenge societal norms, which were keeping both men and women from achieving their full potential. This is why, by understanding the historical and cultural context of his time, we can properly understand his views on women, which are not an attack on women in general, but a critique of their perceived weakness, as defined by the prevalent social structures of his time. This understanding of his philosophical ideas is vital if we want to accurately understand his perception of women. This is further complicated when we consider the paradoxes that marked Nietzsche's life. He was a fierce critic of weakness, and yet was personally marked by physical and emotional frailty. He extolled the virtues of strength and self-mastery, yet struggled with illness, loneliness, and repeated rejections. This duality is not a contradiction, but an essential aspect of his philosophy, highlighting the importance of confronting one's limitations, not denying them, to achieve self-overcoming. Moreover, Nietzsche was a radical thinker who valued honesty and authenticity, but was often seen as deceitful, as his ideas were constantly being misinterpreted and distorted by his critics, and even by some of his followers. This further reinforces the idea that his work is a mirror into the collective shadow, where we project our own internal conflicts unto others, and where our own biases and insecurities get in the way of an objective and honest analysis of the facts. His personal struggles and his philosophical vision cannot be separated. They are intimately connected, and it is through the exploration of these dualities that we can fully grasp the depth of his ideas. His work is not just a philosophical system, but an expression of his personal journey, a testament to the inherent human capacity to strive for greatness, despite the presence of limitations and inner demons. This invites us to reflect on our own inner contradictions and how those also affect our views on the world. To understand the full scope of Nietzsche's views, we must also delve into the historical and biographical context in which he lived. The 19th century was a time of profound social change and rigid societal norms, particularly regarding gender roles. Women were largely confined to the domestic sphere, denied access to education, political power, and many professional opportunities, which were almost exclusively reserved for men. They were often seen as emotionally fragile, intellectually inferior, and primarily responsible for domestic duties and childcare. This perception of women as weak, emotional, and irrational was prevalent throughout society and was deeply ingrained in the cultural consciousness of the time. This historical context is essential to understanding why Nietzsche saw women as embodying the weakness he so vehemently criticized. He was a product of his time, and therefore his views were influenced by the social and cultural norms of his era. He was not immune to the prejudices and biases that were common in 19th century society. It is vital to view his work through this lens, so we can avoid the mistake of projecting our own modern views onto the past. By exploring this historical context, we gain a better understanding of how his personal experiences and the societal norms of his time shaped his perception of women. His views, therefore, are not just a philosophical abstraction, but a product of his personal life and his cultural context. Nietzsche's family life was also a major influence on his views, particularly his relationship with his mother, Franziska, whom he described as overbearing and controlling, and his sister, Elizabeth, who played a significant role in shaping the public perception of his work after his death. Elizabeth was a fervent German nationalist and anti-Semite who manipulated his writings to align with her own political ideologies, deliberately misinterpreting his ideas to fit her own agenda. She selectively edited his works, removed passages she deemed unfavorable, and even forged new material to further her political ambitions. Her influence greatly contributed to the misrepresentation of Nietzsche as a proto-fascist, a perception that has persisted for decades and which was greatly misleading. This highlights the dangers of separating the man from his ideas, as well as how personal biases and motivations can distort philosophical concepts, creating inaccurate and dangerous conclusions. The complexities of his family life, including his tumultuous relationship with his mother and the betrayal by his sister, offer important clues to understand his personal conflicts, which are often projected unto others. The distortions of his ideas by his sister show a clear example of how people's biases and insecurities can twist philosophical truths and contribute to the perpetuation of harmful beliefs, which is a common pattern when dealing with the shadow and its influence over our perception of reality. Further complicating the matter is his infamous relationship with Lou Salome, a highly intelligent and independent woman who captivated Nietzsche's attention, and with whom he developed a deep emotional and intellectual bond. However, after she rejected his marriage proposal, his view of women seemed to become more critical and pessimistic. This rejection likely exacerbated his personal feelings of inadequacy and vulnerability, further shaping his views on women. His romantic interests and his personal rejection experiences must also be seen in the context of his own personal struggles. His relationship with Lou can also be seen through the lens of the shadow and the anima. It is possible that he was projecting his own inner feminine archetype, his anima, onto Lou. Therefore, his rejection was not just a rejection of him as a man, but a rejection of the anima he was projecting onto her, therefore increasing his inner conflict and making him even more critical of women in general. By examining his relationships through this perspective, we start to see how personal experiences can greatly influence philosophical ideas, and how these internal conflicts can be projected onto our understanding of the world and our relationship with others. He might have been unconsciously projecting his own internal conflicts onto the women in his life, using them as a mirror to reflect his own inner demons and repressed emotions. This shows how personal experiences are inseparable from the philosophical and psychological ideas that are developed, and how failing to acknowledge this connection is a sure way to misinterpret reality and create a distorted view of the world. These personal and historical elements, when not critically examined, have greatly contributed to the problematic interpretation of his work, allowing people to jump into conclusions that were not based on a deep analysis of his ideas, and therefore reinforcing their own preconceived notions of who Nietzsche was and what his ideas meant. This further highlights the dangers of taking concepts out of their proper context and not accounting for the author's personal circumstances. His family life, his personal relationships, and the social environment in which he lived were all important factors that contributed to the development of his philosophy. By understanding all these factors, we can begin to grasp his ideas with much more clarity. But also, and perhaps more importantly, it can help us to understand our own personal biases. It is a common pattern to use people's personal lives as a justification for rejecting their ideas, and this is exactly what happens when we fail to properly understand the concept of projection, which Jung explains so well. By doing so, we are not only limiting ourselves, but also failing to learn from the wisdom that their work holds. In Nietzsche's case, the distorted views of his work show us a perfect example of how our own shadows and insecurities can prevent us from seeing the truth. By learning how his ideas have been misinterpreted, we are given a profound lesson into our own capacity for self-deception and our inherent tendency to project our own internal conflicts onto the world. But to further understand this phenomenon, we must delve into the realm of Jungian psychology, which offers us an extra layer of comprehension. To fully grasp the complexities of Nietzsche's views on women, and more importantly, how his experience can help us in our own personal journeys, we must introduce the crucial insights offered by Jungian psychology, especially the concepts of the shadow, the anima, and the collective unconscious. The shadow, as described by Jung, represents the unconscious aspect of our personality, containing all the repressed and disowned traits that we find unacceptable or incompatible with our conscious self-image. These traits can include negative emotions, personal insecurities, and any aspect of ourselves that we are reluctant to acknowledge or accept. These repressed aspects of the personality, which are often denied or suppressed, have a tendency to be projected onto others, which is exactly what we see when Nietzsche's ideas are misinterpreted. This projection is a subconscious mechanism where we attribute our own unwanted qualities to other people. Therefore, if we want to understand why we judge others in such a harsh way, we must always look inwards first and be willing to acknowledge our own dark side. In Jungian terms, the shadow is not inherently evil, but rather a natural and necessary part of the human psyche, and its integration is essential for wholeness, for individuation. Understanding the concept of projection is key to understanding not only Nietzsche's distorted views, but also our own. By learning to recognize our own shadow projections, we can gain more self-awareness and develop more authentic relationships, based not on the projection of our own inner conflicts, but on genuine understanding and acceptance. Furthermore, Jung's concept of the anima, the feminine archetype within the unconscious of men, provides yet another lens to understand Nietzsche's conflicted views on women. The anima represents the unconscious feminine aspect of the male psyche, and its development is crucial for a man's psychological integration. In a healthy form, the anima manifests as a source of creativity, inspiration, and emotional depth. But when neglected or suppressed, it can lead to destructive patterns of behavior, such as the projection of negative qualities onto women. Nietzsche's own struggle with his anima, shaped by the rigid gender roles and social conventions of the 19th century, might have influenced his often critical remarks about women. It's possible he projected his own negative anima experiences onto women, and as such, his criticisms are a reflection of his inner conflicts and insecurities. This is why it is so important to understand our own anima and how it impacts our personal views, so we can also be aware of our own projections. The anima, similar to a muse, can be projected unto our partners and can cause us to see not who they are, but who we want them to be. By exploring this concept, we also see how we can learn to recognize our own anima and be aware of how it influences our perceptions, so we can achieve a better sense of inner balance and emotional maturity. By understanding the anima, we also understand a little bit more of the hidden aspects of the human psyche. This also leads us to the concept of the collective shadow, which is the accumulation of all the shadows of every individual in society, which creates a shared unconscious bias against others. This collective shadow manifests in societal prejudices, stereotypes, and discriminatory practices, creating a culture of division and injustice. This is precisely what we see when Nietzsche's ideas are twisted to fit opposing ideologies and agendas. He might have been expressing not only his personal shadow, but also the collective shadow of his time, which was deeply rooted in patriarchal values and rigid gender roles. His work, therefore, can be seen as a mirror to the collective unconscious, showing us what we are unwilling to acknowledge in our society and in ourselves. By exploring Nietzsche's ideas through the Jungian lens of projection and the collective shadow, we are therefore given an invaluable opportunity for self-examination, to explore the hidden biases that influence our understanding of gender and power. It also invites us to reflect on how societal norms and expectations shape our perception of reality, therefore making us aware that we are often under the influence of the collective unconscious, and that only through individuation and self-knowledge we can finally transcend its limitations. This is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a practical path towards personal growth and towards the creation of a more just and equitable society. Ultimately, by understanding these Jungian concepts, we can gain valuable insights into our own relationship with power, strength, and weakness, and therefore understand our own projections. Through this new lens, we start to see that Nietzsche's apparent hatred of women is not just a philosophical argument, but a personal journey, reflecting his own internal battles, and also it can reflect our own internal battles. His views are a mirror that reflects the shadow aspect of his personality, as well as the collective shadow of his time. By understanding this, we can also begin to see our own projections and biases. When we are able to see our own shadow traits, we are then in a position to finally integrate them and finally start our individuation journey. This self-understanding is not just a theoretical concept, but a vital element of self-improvement, as it allows us to challenge our own assumptions and work towards a path of wholeness. This path is not an easy one. It involves facing our own inner demons and acknowledging the aspects of ourselves that we are not proud of, but is ultimately the only way to achieve true personal growth and more authentic relationships, as it allows us to finally accept ourselves as a whole, instead of projecting our own insecurities onto others. What if, through this process, we could not only understand Nietzsche, but also ourselves? What if the key to understanding the world is to first understand ourselves? This journey into the self might very well be the beginning of the path to self-mastery, and therefore to the full expression of our unique potential. The ultimate answer to the provocative question of whether Nietzsche hated women is that his apparent animosity was not a literal hatred, but rather a complex reflection of his personal struggles, his broader critique of weakness, and his projection of his own inner shadow and anima. Nietzsche's writings and personal life, when seen through a Jungian lens, reveal that his views were a mix of philosophical criticism, personal insecurities, and the projections of his own unresolved inner conflicts. This is not unique to Nietzsche, as this is a very common human experience. We tend to project our own shortcomings onto others and to judge the world according to our own personal biases. Nietzsche's life is a mirror, reflecting our own tendencies to project our shadows and personal conflicts onto others, highlighting a very common human experience, which we can all benefit from recognizing in ourselves. It also shows the importance of not taking ideas out of their proper context, especially the author's personal life and cultural background, as they often carry a great deal of importance in the way ideas are created and disseminated. Therefore, the real lesson here is that it's not about Nietzsche himself, but rather a way to learn about ourselves and our own shortcomings. Throughout this video, we have seen recurring patterns of projection, misinterpretation, and the duality of light and shadow, which have appeared throughout Nietzsche's life and work. We saw how his philosophical ideas, personal relationships, and family dynamics were often misinterpreted and distorted by others as well as by himself. We also saw how he was a man of great strength, but also of great weakness. These patterns are not only relevant to Nietzsche, but also to our understanding of ourselves and others. Just as Nietzsche projected his own inner conflicts onto the world, we also tend to see our own shadows in other people, and we also tend to misinterpret ideas that do not align with our own preconceived notions and our own biases. This ability to recognize these patterns, both in Nietzsche's life and in our own, allows us to finally break free from the endless cycle of projection and misinterpretation. By learning to recognize our own shadows and biases, we can therefore achieve a more objective understanding of reality and move closer to our true potential and to the authentic expression of our inner being. This self-awareness is the beginning of the path towards individuation and the integration of the shadow. Synthesizing Nietzsche's philosophical ideas, his personal history, and Jungian psychology, we can form a much more coherent understanding of his views on women and how they are a product of his time, as well as his own personal demons. His views were not a condemnation of women, but rather a call for all of us to embrace our strengths and to integrate our shadows. They were a reflection of the social context of the 19th century, where gender roles were rigidly defined, and where women were often seen as embodying weakness and submissiveness. Nietzsche was a product of his time, and although his views may sound problematic from a modern perspective, they reveal a lot about the nature of his inner conflicts, and also about the collective shadow of the time. He was not attacking women as a whole, but rather criticizing what he perceived as the weakness and lack of self-assertion in both men and women alike. The problem lies not in his perception, but in the way this perception was misinterpreted by his followers and detractors, as people often tend to gravitate towards extremes when they lack the proper critical analysis. By looking at the ideas in their proper context, we can finally understand that his work was not aimed at condemning women, but rather at challenging all of us to transcend our limitations, to embrace our power, and to seek our own unique meaning in life. This new framework of understanding Nietzsche's perspective transforms our understanding of his philosophy, as well as our own internal biases. By recognizing that his misogyny was, in fact, a reflection of his own inner conflicts, and of his projection of his own anima, we move beyond simplistic labels and delve into the deeper psychological complexities at play. It allows us to see that the concepts of the shadow, the anima, and the collective unconscious are not just theoretical abstractions, but are a practical way to analyze our own inner life. This new understanding allows us to embrace the value of integrating the opposing aspects of our personality, so we can achieve wholeness and move closer to our true potential. By accepting the dual nature of ourselves and others, we can finally transcend the limitations of our own perception and move towards a more balanced and integrated understanding of ourselves and the world. This transformative perspective shifts our focus from judging others to understanding ourselves, and it shows how the study of philosophy can lead us to profound self-knowledge and personal growth. Nietzsche's experience is not isolated. His struggles and projections are representative of broader human experiences. We all carry a shadow, and we are all susceptible to projecting our own inner conflicts unto others, and to misinterpret ideas that do not align with our personal biases. This dynamic plays out in our daily lives, in our relationships, and in our understanding of society. Every time we judge others, every time we feel threatened by an opposing opinion, every time we are quick to label or stereotype, we are often expressing our own unacknowledged shadows and biases. Therefore, understanding Nietzsche's struggles helps us to understand our own, highlighting the importance of critical self-examination and the need to confront the uncomfortable aspects of our personalities. By doing this, we can not only improve our own lives, but we can also contribute to creating a more conscious and just society. This shows that this understanding of the self is not just an intellectual exercise, but a crucial tool for navigating the complex dynamics of human interaction. The significance of recognizing the recurring patterns of projection and misinterpretation cannot be overstated, as they reveal our hidden biases and unconscious assumptions, and therefore show us a path for transcending them. By acknowledging our own shadow and anima, we can gain a deeper understanding of how they influence our relationships and how they shape our perception of reality. Our biases and assumptions often blind us to a more accurate understanding of ourselves and the world, causing us to react with judgment and prejudice. By acknowledging these inner workings, we can start to question the stories that we tell ourselves, and to recognize that we are often under the influence of unconscious forces that we are often unaware of. Therefore, this new framework offers us a powerful tool to become more self-aware and more compassionate to others, as we begin to see the world not through the lens of our own insecurities, but through the lens of understanding and acceptance. This is why understanding the patterns of projection and misinterpretation is not just a way to understand Nietzsche, but a crucial step for self-knowledge. The implications of this new understanding are far-reaching. If we understand that Nietzsche's views were shaped by his personal struggles, by the historical context of his time, and by his own projections, we can then apply this framework to all areas of our own lives. This is particularly important in how we relate to others, and especially in how we understand gender. It allows us to move beyond the traditional dualities and stereotypes, to recognize the individual, and to appreciate the diversity of human expression. We can also learn to see beyond the limitations of our own perspectives and appreciate that we are all unique individuals with our own personal struggles and inner conflicts, and that by looking inward, we can understand the world around us and appreciate it in its fullness. This framework is therefore not just a tool for understanding a particular philosopher, but a pathway to transform our own relationships and to create a more just and equitable society. It empowers us to become more conscious of our own projections and to take responsibility for our own emotional well-being. This framework ultimately shifts the focus from judging others to understanding ourselves, and this allows us to create more authentic relationships. When we are able to see our own shortcomings, we become more understanding of the shortcomings of others. When we accept our own shadows, we become more accepting of the shadows of others. This new understanding also allows us to view the other for who they truly are, not for who we think they should be. By accepting the dual nature of ourselves and of the other, we can transcend limited perceptions and move towards wholeness, both individually and collectively. Therefore, the key to creating more meaningful connections with others lies in our willingness to explore our own inner world, to acknowledge our own shadows, and to accept ourselves, with all our inherent flaws, as complete human beings. And through this self-acceptance, we can begin to truly love and accept others. Having tied all the loose ends, we can now see that the initial question of whether Nietzsche hated women has finally been answered. His views were more nuanced than the simplistic label of misogynist suggests. His ideas were shaped by his personal struggles, by his philosophical views, and by the psychological forces he was unconsciously subjected to. Therefore, the idea that he hated women is simply a misinterpretation of a complex man who was wrestling with his own inner demons. His biography, philosophy, and psychological analysis all converge into this conclusion, which finally resolves the initial mystery. This reframes the way we should look at philosophy. Not just as a way to learn about ideas, but as a way to learn about ourselves and about our own inner workings. In this sense, Nietzsche's work serves as a mirror, reflecting the inherent complexities of the human condition and inviting us to explore our own depths. The real value lies not in the answers, but in the questions, and more importantly, in our willingness to question ourselves. The pattern of misinterpretation that we have seen throughout this video is also complete. Nietzsche's ideas have been distorted and often used against him, but this is often the case when people attempt to twist ideas to justify their own biases and views. We also tend to do this in our own lives, when we lack the capacity for critical analysis, and we are quick to judge and to reject everything that goes against our personal beliefs. By recognizing this pattern, we can also learn to avoid this error in our own lives, and instead, we can approach ideas with curiosity and with a willingness to learn and to grow. Just as Nietzsche's ideas were often misinterpreted, so too are our own ideas and views often distorted by our personal projections and insecurities. Therefore, recognizing this pattern not only allows us to better understand Nietzsche's work, but also to better understand ourselves. The initial question has now been completely resolved. Nietzsche did not hate women in the traditional sense. His views were informed by his personal struggles, by the context of his time, and by the projections of his own shadow and anima. His apparent misogyny is a consequence of his broader critique of weakness and herd mentality, and not a personal attack on women. The idea that Nietzsche hated women, which is so prevalent in society, is based on a limited and misinformed view of his work. By reframing this narrative, we can finally see Nietzsche not as a villain, but as a deeply flawed and complex human being whose work is ultimately a call for us to confront our own weaknesses and embrace our own strengths. This is the essence of his philosophical message. Now that we have answered the initial question, we can finally release the tension that has been building, as we have provided an answer that is both intellectually sound and emotionally satisfying. While Nietzsche's views were certainly problematic, they were also very valuable to understanding the human psyche and our own shortcomings. It shows how a deeply troubled man can also have profound insights into the human condition and how his struggles are not unique, but rather a reflection of the universal human experience. This resolution not only provides closure to the initial question, but also offers us a clear path forward, a path towards self-understanding and personal growth. Nietzsche, a man often misunderstood, is now revealed to us in his complex totality, showing us the importance of looking beyond the surface and embracing the inherent complexities of the human experience. This understanding is a powerful tool for self-knowledge. But now, let us turn our attention to our own lives and to the future. How have your own societal norms and perceptions shaped your views on gender and power? What parts of your personality are being denied or repressed? How much does your internalized anima guide your actions? These questions serve as a starting point for further exploration and self-inquiry as we move our focus from Nietzsche to our own inner world. These are not just abstract questions, but a personal invitation for each viewer to explore their own shadows and their own biases. Therefore, this video is not the end, but the beginning of a new journey. The potential implications of the concepts we have discussed are far-reaching, both for our individual and collective growth. By understanding our own shadows and our own projections, we can contribute to a more conscious and compassionate society. This is not just a one-time lesson, but a continuous journey. And it's a journey that we must take if we want to create more just and equitable relationships. It's a journey that begins by first turning our gaze inwards and then extends to our understanding of the world around us. This continuous exploration of our own inner workings is the key to true self-improvement and the key to creating a better world. To begin this journey, I offer you concrete and actionable steps. Start a journal and explore your biases and your hidden assumptions. Explore your dreams, which are a window into your unconscious, and start actively engaging in shadow work to acknowledge what your shadow is and what it represents. Make a commitment to approach your shadow with curiosity and not with judgment. Remember that growth comes from integration, not denial. And remember that the path towards wholeness requires us to embrace the totality of our experience and not just the parts we deem acceptable. This is a journey of self-discovery that can bring you closer to your true potential and to a more authentic expression of who you are. Finally, I invite you to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below and to join the discussion, as this journey is best traveled in community. Share this video so that others can also start on this important path of self-understanding. Continue your exploration of Nietzsche, Jung, and other related topics, and remember that this video is just a starting point and not the final destination. Together, we can create a more conscious and compassionate world, one person at a time.